Hi, I'm Ann Master. Welcome to my Common Sense Living podcast, where I'm going to add common sense and value to your life. To get a pen and paper, you're going to want to take some notes today. We have a special guest, Jeremy Slate. And he's the founder of Create Your Own Life podcast, which studies the highest performers in the world, including the former CIA director, Super Bowl champions, and even a 3-time Indianapolis 500 winner. There's so much more I could say about him. So let's just skip all that. Let him talk about what he can offer you as an audience today. So welcome, Jeremy. Glad to have you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Ann. I'm glad to add some value to your audience today, and I hope we can really help some people today.
Mm-hmm. So where would you like to start? You want to say about all your achievements?
I guess, I don't know. I'm not, like, it's interesting. Like, I don't like to talk about myself a lot. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I've done a lot of stuff. I've failed a lot of stuff. I've won a lot of stuff, but I think at the same time, it's life experience that makes us who we are. Right. And I think there's so much we can learn from that. So for me, I'd love to start where we can help your audience best.
Okay. Well, there was one of the things that I know it can help me. And this was, let me see, finding your passion versus following your passion. Why following your passion is a terrible idea. I'm very passionate about what I believe in, but maybe you can fill me in on how I can make that better.
Well, so here's the way I look at that. I'm a big believer in like manual labor jobs. I think those are really, really important, and we're actually missing a lot of those right now. Because at the same time, whether the economy is a little shaky right now, so at the same time, like, you need to have some of the life skills for if any of those things don't go well. But if you look at it, what you do should be something you enjoy, which I think is important. But when you have something that you're following your passion, that's more of like a passive process. Does that make sense? Whereas when you're finding your passion, that implies work. It's an active process, something you're doing. So I'm a big believer in that you should do a lot of things that match with, your belief system and what you're good at. And you find the thing that matches best with what you can actually, make money with and what you can actually grow with. Because I think so many people, like, you can be really passionate about crocheting, right? Or like making things for Etsy or something like that. But unless you're figuring out how to get it out there and sell it to people and market it to people, then you're not going to be able to do it very long. And I think that's one of the big issues people don't consider when they consider the idea of following their passion, right? They've read a self-help book or something like that tells them, find your passion and you will never work a day in your life. And I don't think that's true, because you have to like something and be good at something. And there's a really awesome book that I read that I think is actually really usable. It's called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. It's actually based on a quote from Steve Martin. When they asked the actor Steve Martin about his life, and they're like, well, Steve, how did you get to be famous? He's like, well, I worked so hard that one day I was so good they couldn't ignore me. And that's what it's really about, is you find something you're good at. You find something that you can see yourself making a profit off of or building a business off of, and you get better and better and better and better at that thing. And you build such a skill set that matches with opportunity. And that's what it's all about. I think so often, though, people just kind of want life to happen to them. And it really is an active process of going out there and doing things and figuring out what's best for you. I'm a big proponent of like doing things, which is funny because I have a master's degree I don't use. Because I just think that we're too much in education now and not enough on doing this. And I think there's so much value on what you can do and create and the skills you can build.
Yes, I agree. We have lost the basic skills that are life sustaining, whether it be building your house, cleaning your septic tank, plumbing, that kind of stuff, furnaces. Those are such basic. And of course, knowing how to plant a seed and watch it grow and harvest it. We've lost so much of that because we've elevated technology and an education, the college education. I mean, all these other things are basic needs. And if you have that as a foundation, all the other is kind of like frosting on the cake. Yeah.
But what's interesting, Ann, though, that like, if you look at it, I'm a big believer in something that's really missing, and that's the idea of apprenticeships. And you see it a lot in the trades, right? Like, if you want to be a plumber, you have to work under a plumber for a certain amount of years, or if you want to be a pipe fitter, you work under a pipe fitter for a certain amount of years. But we've lost that in a lot of other jobs or careers. And because I think when you look at it, for at least I turned 36 last week, so I'm closing in on 40. So my education experience is a little bit different than what kids are seeing now. And I think with what you're seeing now with college has kind of become like an extra 4 years of high school, if that makes sense. rather than like something like, okay, I'm going to get a specialized degree, I'm going to do something, I'm going to go into that career field, and I'm going to really create with it. I think the thing that's actually missing is this idea of an apprenticeship. You do your high school career 2 years, 4 years, whatever they make it. And then for 2 years, 3 years, you work in a trade or you work in a career where you get some experience, because it serves a couple different things. And I think like I have a lot of friends that are priests that went to the seminary, and people forget when you look at the seminary, it serves a couple different purposes. The first is to make you a priest. The second is discernment, right? Like, should I actually be here? And I think people, if we had apprenticeships back and out there in a lot of different fields, you get people that would get on the job experience, which is great, but they'd also do it and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this, right? Because you have people that go to college for a certain amount of years, they go into a career field, they're deep in debt, they now need to make a lot of money to pay off that debt, but they're in a career they hate and they can't actually make money in. So it's like, to me, I think there's so much we have to do with how we're educated. But anyway, that's my diatribe on it.
Yeah, well, we can go down the rabbit hole on that, because I think college was promoted as being so necessary, and we forgot about those basic skills, the basic trades that without those, well, we deteriorate as a society. And I think people have woke up, like you just said. You go and you get in debt for this job that, oh my gosh, I can't stand it. I mean, I worked in the factory at Square D building circuit breakers. Mundane job, made good money. You were just a worker bee. They didn't give a rat's ass about you. Just turn it out, right? Make the money. So I went to school. I went in the military. I'm 73 now. I call myself a late bloomer because I have done many things later in life. And at 31, I went in the service. Best thing I ever did for me, because now whenever I think I can't do something, I pull on that education that I got. So I was a factory worker. I went in for supply. They wanted me to be a cook or mechanic. I already work with my hands. I don't want to do that. I already cook. I'm a woman. I wanted something that stimulated my mind. So supply was great. And then at 45, I still wanted more. And so at 45, I got my nursing license. And then at 72, I became public speaker, author, and let me tell you, let me plug my own book, shall I? Heaven Sent, Listening to Your Inner Voice. And it's my spiritual experiences that I took a different trajectory to God. I didn't go to the typical church and be indoctrinated that way. Mine was through nature. I grew up in the country, and we worked with the land and the animals and knew that everything was all dependent on our higher power and how we believe in him. So I grew up with that, and I let it build. And to this day, I am so happy. I bloomed at 72, and now I'm 73. I say I'm 80-20, 80% organic, 20% human, because I do have a drink now and then. I do eat junk food now and then. But I know we've come such a long way away from the basics that make us who we are, and we're not happy, because we need to return back to that. We worship money and pills, not God.
So there's a couple things that are interesting about that, Ann. I think the first is like, so I'm in Northwest New Jersey, which is kind of, I guess, more like living in the Midwest. It's not like the rest of the state. And so it's farm country here. There's a lot of factories here, people working at factories. So like my dad growing up, he started as a guy that didn't finish high school. He worked in the machine shop at a factory. He got his GED later on, and every piece of continuing education his company offered, he took. So what happened is, he kept rising the ladder from the lowest guy in the factory to, by the time he retired a few years ago, he was the vice president of the company.
Wow.
But to me, I see that there's a path that you can open to yourself if you're somebody willing to continually improve yourself and work hard, right? I think there's such a path to that. The other thing I want to say too is you mentioned kind of that the experience of the land, and I think for me, my wife and I, we do this whole experience called like homesteading. So we live on 4 acres, 4.5 acres. We have 24 chickens, a rooster, a pig. So my little girls go out and get the eggs every day. The one of them got in trouble yesterday because she thought it would be funny to go out and smash the eggs and see what daddy did. So she got put on the top step and she had to think about it. But like to me, there's so much value in that because, number one, we're closer to our food sources and stuff like that. So you have the experience of really valuing those things that are coming into your home,
Right.
the things you've helped to create. So in a way you've earned them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing is like, you're closer to remembering like where they came from. And I can appreciate you saying, it is more of a spiritual experience. Cause like, you go out and buy a chicken breast and it's like, okay, well, you don't know where this came from. Right. But then,
Right.
you've raised the chicken from an egg and you've seen it come and you've seen it lay eggs and different things like that. You're closer to the experience. So I feel like you appreciate it more and it is more of a spiritual experience in that way.
Yeah. Appreciate is a good word for that. Yeah. We had our pig and, my job was slopping the hog. Yeah, sweet, 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 sweet. Yeah, I remember that. And I had to pull weeds. And that's another thing. We got caught up with keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. Couldn't have dandelions in the yard. No, I had to go out and dig them out, right? Well, that was busy work. That was to keep me busy and having a task. I understand that now. But back then I thought, geez, Dad, they keep growing back. Well, of course, you've got the taproot. Now, if you get your education, you find out that you can make coffee off of the dried root. The leaves are a great bitter for your liver. And the blossoms you can, fry up, with a little flour, butter, whatever, and eat the whole dandelion. And it's really hard to kill a dandelion unless you use Roundup. And then you kill a lot of things.
Well, then you're worried about glyphosate and all the other stuff going in your body then at that
exactly.
point. So.
That's what I mean. So last year here in Texas, in San Antonio, the drought was awful. The weather was insanely hot. I'm watering twice a day. I actually had 2 dandelions die. It's really hard to kill a dandelion. But this year, all their relatives made up for it. I just have prolific dandelions and all the little fuzzy blue,
yeah,
blow them, the seeds. When you're kids, you blow them and your father would say, oh God, no, there's going to be dozens more, But anyway, it's an appreciation and a different way of looking at things. And I feel so blessed for that. I started my podcast, Common Sense Living, because I wanted to tell people, I'm a nurse. I wanted to tell people the health, what they needed to do for the health. So I had expanded that knowledge and gotten certified in health coaching. People didn't seem to want to hear how to fix themselves because it's easier to go to the junk food store. It's faster, not to mention if you take it one meal at a time, it's cheaper paying $10 for that meal than looking at $100 plus bill for a week's supply of groceries. But anyway.
Well, what's interesting about that though, Ann? So I was a personal trainer in my early 20s, and I trained people in home. And when you have a lot of conversations with people, the thing you realize is like people look at it and like, all right, I'm unhealthy. But you know what actually makes people change? They're like, you know what? Oh my gosh, I can't play with my kids anymore because I'm so unhealthy, or I'm not present in my family's life because I'm so unhealthy. And I think many times until people kind of get to this thing where they're really at a need of change, right? Where it's really putting their life in such a difficult position, that's where they change. So it's there. They just got to really see like, what is this preventing me from doing? And I think a lot of people aren't willing to look at that.
Right. Because it's down the road. That won't happen. And my own sister won't listen to me. 4 years ago, she's talking that, they said she's got osteoporosis. And I said, you can do this, this, and this, and it'll help. Oh, you just want to make money off of me. So 4 years later, she's got osteopenia. What can she do? And I said, I can't do anything for you. I could have 4 years ago.
Right.
But you didn't want to hear it. So I can't fix people. And I wished I could.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, believe in your maker, appreciate him. And I plan on living to 125.
More power to you.
Yep. I'm old, proud of it, and I'm aging younger. And I have so many things in life to pull on that I can help others, guide others. And I'm just so excited. I've never been as happy as I have been this last year. I finally found me.
You know what's interesting, Ann, is I'm a big believer in like, a being is as alive as he can help someone. And what you're talking about now, like, you're feeling so alive because you can offer so much help. And I think for so many people, it's actually really therapeutic for them if they're not doing well to figure out how they can help someone, because it shows them help is possible. And in offering that help too, they see the help is possible for them. And I think it's one of the biggest things. You have a lot of hope when you understand help is possible and you can offer it to others.
I'm working on a course now on diabetes because I know that you can prevent it. I know that some can be cured. It depends how bad you are, how bad you want to do it, but anyway, I haven't got it fully developed yet, but I'm excited to do that because that feeds my passion of helping others. Sure, I want to make some money. Of course, who doesn't? I spent over $1,000 on the class that I'm going to be using snippets out of, and I'm going to offer recipes and stuff like that. But anyway, just to be able to connect with people and help other people to see that they can be better, and then they can help somebody, and then, the domino effect.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you at 36, you have a lot of wisdom.
I like, so it's interesting. My mom actually worked from home when I was a kid. She was a beautician. So my experience was dealing with people that were in their 50s and 60s and 70s every single day. So I'm used to like talking to people that have a lot of wisdom. So I feel like I've picked up a lot of that. And I also I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, I feel like one of the reasons I had trouble fitting in high school is because from an early age, I'd always just dealt with adults, and I felt like it was weird to have to dumb yourself down to deal with people your age. You know what I mean? So it was like, I don't know. I've lived an interesting life experience compared to how most people live their life.
Yeah. I knew at 8 years old, I was different, but I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And it's because I looked at God different. I said, why would I go to church and talk to God under a man-made building when I can go outside and talk under the open sky or the tree and just have a heart-to-heart talk with him? And so that was more my religion. My dad was Methodist, mom was Lutheran, and dad chose that, religion is great. When you get married, you take your husband's religion. That way there's not that conflict between the two.
That's tough though, because that's kind of like negating who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like that can be really tough.
You mean taking somebody else's religion?
Yeah, because that's like, because like for me, like I feel like spirituality is such a closely held personal belief, right? So I feel like to take it because of someone else, you may love that person and appreciate that person, whatever, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know that I would quite do that, because it has to be such a personal thing for you, you know?
Well, I didn't. I bucked the system.
Well, it sounds like it worked out.
Yeah, it did. It did. My sister and I, we butted heads. If it's not God, whatever, because I went to Unity Church. I felt I knew things. In my book, I even have it where I don't know if I can pronounce the word clairsentience, I think, where you know things, you hear things, you see things,
clairvoyance.
Something like that, but I think it's sentience or something. Anyhow, I have all 4 of those, but not all at once, thank God, or I'd probably be nuts. But I had actually heard back, I lived in Iowa, and I was doing yard work, and I had this gazebo, and I was working, and over my left shoulder, I heard a deep voice say, "You're making the altar for your wedding." And I looked and I said, "I am not." And I didn't get married either. But and then when we bought our house here in San Antonio, and we were looking at one that was turnkey, 100% walk-in. And the other one, the realtor said it was an A property. And the other one was a C property. It had been vacant for 6 months and needed some TLC. And so my husband's Hispanic, and I grew up that the man's had a household. So I was going to let him, when the realtor says, "Well, which one do you want?" And he said, "C property." And the realtor was, "Well, what? $100,000 difference, right?"
Wow.
And he's looking at that check for the $100,000 more house, right? Which I knew, well, then I have to get a full-time job. I can't go back home to see my mom, but once a year, and so anyhow, Robert said, "We'll take the C." And I said, "Spirit told me that was our house." He said, "What?" I said, "Yep, 3 days ago, Spirit told me that's our house." He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I said, "Because I wanted you to make the decision. But trust me, had you made the wrong one, I'd let you know." and we've been here since 2008, and it still needs some TLC. Sure. A house, fix or repair daily.
But you know what's interesting is I feel like that also grants the other person ability to be, right? Like I think far too often we want to decide for other people, we want to tell other people what to do, and what's tough is you have to be true to you and who you are, right? And then you bring that of you to whatever relationship you're in. And I think you can kind of stomp the other person's ability to be if you don't acknowledge they kind of have their own thoughts and feelings and way of being, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, Robert is his name, and he is brilliant minded. I was attracted to his mind. And we talk about things, how he feels about this and I feel about that, what we want to accomplish. And so we work together that way. And I hadn't had that experience, but guess how I met him? I asked God to put the man I'm supposed to be with in my life, not necessarily the one I think I love, but who I'm supposed to be with. And 2 weeks later, he contacted me on Yahoo Personals.
Oh my gosh.
And it went from there. Yeah. So ask and you shall receive. It's so true. I didn't intend this podcast to be about God or whatever. I wanted to hear about you and your accomplishments. But it can flow the way it does. I don't care.
But I think at the same time, like we've talked about a lot of subjects I'm passionate about, right? Like I think if we handle education, that's a big deal. If we handle, what we want to do with our lives, that's a big deal. If we can permit other people to be, we can get along a lot better. You know what I mean? These are things that I think are actually vital to who we are as human beings. And I think too often, we're looking at, I guess not the right things. We're looking at things that are superficial. And I think frankly, you and I've discussed a lot of things that are real things that matter to our lives.
And with all the things that I listen and know and is presented to me, I want to tell you that you are the generation that is the new world that's coming. And it's not the new world that they're talking about, the gloom and doom, and we're going to own nothing and all that. No, that will disappear because more people are believing in God, the younger people especially, but your generation is the beginning of it. Yes, there's people like me, my age, that started it, so to speak, embraced it, shall we say, and then that embracing helped it to grow. So yeah, I'm excited about the future.
I am too. And because I think I've read, first of all, I read a lot of interesting books, like one of which is there's this one about economic cycles called The Fourth Turning, which is kind of interesting. And we're kind of in the change of an economic cycle right now, from like we're in the final phase of a fourth cycle going into a first cycle again, which is interesting. So that's kind of one part of it. But I think at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity in all these things that are coming along. There's more opportunities ever been before, right? So I think, if you, allow things to go more towards control and more towards things like that, like sure, they can go bad. But I think at the same time, we've also had more opportunity than we've ever had before. So I think there's can actually be some really great things happening, but we're seeing industries change drastically. We're seeing the economy change drastically. I'm seeing businesses that have been around for, a long time end up closing up shop and changing, but that's because those industries are shifting. We're seeing legacy media dying and going into more like things like we're doing right here. So we are in this kind of dramatic shift of the world people have known. And I think something really cool is in the cusp of happening now.
And that's part of the excitement. It's the scare, the fear of the unknown. It's kind of like when you have your first date with this guy, this gal that you really like, and you wonder, how is it going to be? How's that first kiss going to feel? Things like that, the excitement of that. And when you experience it, you find out, oh, it didn't fit for me, or it was really great. And, it would blossom further. In a way, it's kind of like that, but I'm just so excited for what is to come because I choose not to live in fear. I refuse. I don't even choose to. I refuse to live in fear. Because being a healthcare provider and an energy worker, I do healing touch for animals and people. And the vibrations with your chakras and stuff. And fear, just the word fear, don't you just feel kind of down? But if you say vibrancy and whatever, love, light, it lifts you. And I choose to think positive and happy thoughts. And then I feel it, I live it, I infect other people with that. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. You've got some good stuff here, from unremarkable to extraordinary. How to ignite your passion to go from passive observer to the creator of your own life. And PR versus marketing versus sales, right combination to scale your company. Okay. How to channel adversity as a strength when others run away. Now that sounds like a good one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go with that one.
Well, it's interesting because if you look at adversity, I think it's a transformational process, right? If you look when a piece of metal goes into a blacksmith's furnace, it's very hot. It's very difficult. There's a hammer involved. So it comes out as something very different. And I think adversity is the same way if we approach it correctly. I think a lot of people will look at it and be like, poor me, this thing is happening to me, you know, I'm a victim, you know, whatever it may be. And sure, can you be a victim of circumstances? Those things can happen, but there's always an opportunity in every one of those things. And you have to look at it for, what can I get out of this situation? How can I improve from the situation? What skills can I gain from the situation? Can I become mentally tougher from the situation? Can I learn to love more from the situation? Whatever it is. And I think when you approach a situation like that, no matter how difficult it may be, that's how you become an extraordinary person, is you look at that and you say, what can I get out of this situation, or how can I change from this situation? You know, not just say, you know, I'm a victim and do I get my participation trophy or whatever it may be? Because I think far too many people want to have it like that, and they want to sit on the couch and just watch TV, when it's like, really, this thing has happened to you. It's a terrible situation. You know, what are you going to do with it? Like, for me, back in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke. And I came home from the gym one day and I was the person that found her. That was the single most difficult experience of my life.
I bet.
You know, luckily we still have my mom with us today, though she does have some extensive disabilities from that experience. But for me, it made me look at my career and I'm like, you know, what am I doing here? You know, I was teaching high school at that point in time. I wasn't very happy doing it. And I went through a number of different things till I found what I'm doing in my life now, which is, you know, running a media company and making an impact and having these incredible conversations and podcasts. And had that terrible thing not happened to me, I wouldn't have gone where I've gone. So, like, there is always something in adversity if you see how to use it and not just say, I'm a victim, this happened to me. But I think far too many people want to approach it like that. One of my favorite examples of this, I don't know if you follow football at all, but in my opinion, Tom Brady, that just retired, is the greatest quarterback of all time.
Oh yeah.
He didn't start till his senior year of high school. He ended up going to University of Michigan. The coach that recruited him left before he even played there. So then he doesn't start until his senior year, but then he has to compete with another guy to start. So he only starts half the games, gets drafted in the 6th round, and only plays because the quarterback ahead of him, Drew Bledsoe, literally almost dies in the football field. So, like, he has all of these things happen, and you know what happened? He studied, he watched film, he practiced more, he worked harder. So when that opportunity came up, he was ready. And to me, there is always something you can get out of that, because he realized, okay, I'm not as good as these other guys. I don't have the skill of these other guys. So I'm going to be smarter. I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to be mentally tougher. So that's what adversity can really do. It can teach you so much.
I was out for lunch with a girl yesterday that I met on one of these live calls that we have in the speaking realm. And she lives here in San Antonio too. So I go, oh, let's connect. And we were on a call and a week or so ago, and they said, introduce yourself. So she says, hi, I'm Sarah. I wrote a book. I'm a special education teacher, you know, blah, 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 all mundane. And they said, where's the voice inflection? How can you excite anybody? You're talking so, you know, she felt so horrible, so down, you know, and she ended up hanging up on the call. And not right then, but later on. So I looked at her and I said, now reframe how you're looking at that. So it's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Because so many of us is how you frame it, right? Like, I think so many times we want to think one thing when actually a different thing. And it's literally just a mental thing is what changes it. Yes.
She was defeated. She felt bad about herself. She's heavy. So mentally we have a vision of people that aren't fit, which we need to get rid of. But anyway, I said, now look at it this way. They gave you a gift. Now you go home, you chew on it, you read whatever, you throw some voice inflection in there. How would you want to hear what you just said? The other thing is, I was asked later to introduce myself. I learned from you because they were critiquing you. So I said, hi, I'm Annalee Master, and I'm a dynamic woman, and I blah, 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 and I blah, blah, you know, whatever. They all gave me great kudos, you know, but I said, you taught me something. So don't beat yourself up about it. That was a learning opportunity. You learned from it. I re-emphasized that learning. And, you know, we talked for almost 2-3 hours, I think. And we split, and we were so glad that we met. We know we can help each other down the road. And she bought my book and actually gifted me hers.
Oh,
and
cool.
I was reading the first chapter last night, and I texted her and I said, you know, change your voice inflection, get that in there. You're incredibly intelligent. You've got it. So just, you know, be proud of yourself. Well, she's 220 pounds. She's lost 50, but she knows she's being beaten up because she's fat. Well, so what? You got a great personality in there. When you release all this negative stuff people put on you, you will release that. You're going to be svelte and good, and people are going to wonder, who the heck, where did she come from? So, have that for your vision, so anyhow, it was great.
Well, what's interesting about that, though, I think is so much of what we create is what we think. Do you know what I mean? Let's imagine two people, right? Those two people walk into the exact same city. The first person says, "Oh my God, this place, I'm here." So he gets robbed, he gets a flat tire, like anything bad that you can imagine happens to this guy. Second guy approaches and says, "Oh my gosh, this place, I'm so excited." Makes a friend, gets a free lunch, somebody buys him a suit. Like, so much of what you do and what you put out is your mindset on it, right? Like, so it is so interesting. Like the other day I was watching, we don't watch a lot of TV, but the one thing I've been watching with my wife recently is called Yellowstone. And commercial comes on for this. We're near New York, right? So we're like 45 minutes near New York City. This play comes on called New York, New York. And I'm like, wow, we haven't been to Broadway in years. That would be great. I would love to do that with you. The next morning, a friend calls us and he goes, "Hey, I was supposed to go see New York, with somebody, and I actually have 2 tickets and I can't go. Do you want them?"
Oh my God.
Like,
oh
yes.
My God.
But you know what I mean? Like I'm not a big believer if like you look at yourself in the mirror 5 times and say, "I'm, beautiful and wonderful," and it's gonna be. But I think if you do the right thing enough times, you put yourself in the position to win. But to me, I was like, wow, that's kind of pretty cool that I decided I wanted this thing, and there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember years ago, I was doing a vision board, and I was manifesting for this and that and the other thing, whatever, and for the man come in my life that's going to sweep me off my feet, right? I wanted somebody who knew how to dance and this and that. And the more I was doing it, the more it was unspiritual. And the man in my life wasn't there anymore. It was all this, the vision board turned out to be all spiritual. And that came first. So I just thought that was great. I'm quite happy with my life. I've had my ups and downs. I've had not such good relationships, but I learned from every one of them. And some of my so-called friends were entertained by me. I'm sure we all have who we think are friends that set you up for failure so they can laugh at you and get their entertainment. And that was with my second husband. And she set me up with this guy. I said, "Why would you set me up with him?" She was a Christian. So I trusted her. And she said, "Well, I didn't say you had to marry him." And I'm trusting her because I didn't feel good enough about me. And I admit that. So anyway, she ended up having her daughter got involved with a guy just like that. And I got rid of him. Well, I shouldn't say that. That doesn't sound so good. I divorced him. And her daughter had a child, and now she's got one of those kind of men in her life forever, because what you throw out there comes back to you also. So she gave all this negative out there, and it came back and blessed her with her own shit.
Yeah, well, but I think that's so often what it is. I think sometimes there's twofold to this, right? There's so many times that we get upset for people for things, and oftentimes those things are just our own shit, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll get mad at people for certain things, and it's like actually, like, sometimes what you get upset about is a mirror, which is really interesting. But I think the other part about it is as well is knowing who you associate with. I think it's just a vital thing, right? Because that's a really, really important point you brought up, because one of the biggest problems I ran into is when I kind of went from being a teacher to having all these different experiences in my life, like starting a business and failing at 4 different ones before something finally worked out. Is I had a lot of people telling me what they wanted from me, right? And there's a couple different things you have to look at with that, right? When people tell you what they want from you, that often comes from fear, right? Because if you get better, then they would have to get better. And that's kind of scary to some people. But the other part about it is, this can be the hardest thing, Ann, let me tell you, is I think often when we're trying to do or accomplish something and we get that negative feedback, we want to show those people how wrong they are. And I think often that actually makes the situation worse, because then you're creating an enemy. And I think often you have to kind of just acknowledge, well, I see where you're coming from. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to do what you want to do. I'm going to do this thing, and we can kind of still get along. It can be the single hardest thing to do, but let me tell you, I've done it both ways, and it's much easier to do it that way than the reverse. But knowing who to associate with is the single biggest thing that will change your life.
And when I first started this career last year, and my friends, my coworkers, and they're saying, the one says, "Don't forget us little peons when you're rich and famous, Ann." And I said, "Oh, sweetie, I could never forget my little peons because I am one of you and you are one of me. You guys and your support and encouragement is what fuels me to be more, so I can touch more lives out there." So I could never forget the people that gave me the steps, if you will, the step ups. Yeah. No, I don't know. I just, I don't know. I can't explain how wonderful things can be in your life if you open that door.
That's really important too, because like I've had a lot of conversations with people that are like well known and they're famous and like things like that. And so many of them like haven't forgotten where they've come from. And those are incredible conversations because those people want to add so much value to your life. And like they remember those experiences and they remember being in those places. And there's others that they've totally forgotten where they came from. And you're like, how, like who you are now and where you've come from, they don't agree with each other, right? Like I think we evolve and we improve and we become better people. But I think forgetting your life experiences and the things that got you here, like each one of those experiences made you this person, good or bad.
Yes.
And I think to just totally forget them or totally act like they didn't happen, like to me is crazy.
Well, I think that they are not really rooted in spiritual.
Yeah.
They don't worship God. They worship the dollar bill. They worship the accolades that they're getting, the possessions that they have. I mean, anybody can buy a Corvette. So why not the Maserati, the Aston Martin, what's the other one?
Like a Bentley or something?
Oh, even, yeah, a Ferrari, I think, those kind. Anybody can go and buy a Corvette.
Yeah.
If you got credit card, you can do it, that whatever, but somebody trying to impress me with that doesn't mean a thing. I could get $1 million just like that, hypothetically here, just like that. If somebody gave me $1 million, what would I do with it? Well, I would set myself and my husband up, our family, our friends, and I would find something that I can pay back to other people that need it. Like you're in a sense worshiping the earth. So I could reinvest in regenerative farming, whatever, give people grants, whatever. That's what I would like to do. It's not, I'm 73. I don't need $1 million. I was worth $500,000 at one time in my life. Who cares? It's just a number. But some people have the drive to go for that. Maybe they want to say that they're a millionaire because they can say that they were once. Okay. But it's not what you've got, it's what you do with what you have.
Yes, absolutely. Because here's the thing too, is I think when you're looking at what you don't have, you're coming from a place of like lack rather than coming from a place of like lack or scarcity, rather coming from a place of abundance, if that makes sense. Right. And you think so much differently when you're appreciative for what you have, or you see what you have, or you know what I mean? Like, cause it's like you treat people differently, you show up differently, you're nicer to your kids, you add more value to other people. But like when you're looking at it the other way, you're kind of like, well, this person's trying to screw me, and like, this isn't going well. So it's your viewpoint, and I feel like we've been talking about this whole conversation, but your viewpoint is like 99% of what happens to you in your life. Do you know what I mean? Like there are things that will happen, like there are negative things that will happen to you, there's positive things that will happen to you, but how are you going to use that motion? That's the biggest thing.
I think I've made the statement where I thank God for the adversities in my life so I can better appreciate the good things in my life. I think that I worded it something to that effect. I don't begrudge the things that were negative in my life. It made me stronger, gave me a different perspective. I can understand where people are coming from on that. And on the other hand, I'll accept those blessings with gratitude.
Yes. Because it is a viewpoint when you look at what am I grateful for versus like what don't I have. And when you're looking at what don't I have, or what won't I have, like number one, you're creating a negative postulate, like you're never going to get that thing anyway. But the other part about it is you're usually not nicer, you know? And I think when you come at it for what I'm grateful for, it really does change your viewpoint.
Mm. And I'm pretty intuitive. And although we're not person to person, I feel that you have a good heart and you're on
I
the
try
right
my
track.
best. Am I perfect all the time? And absolutely not. I try my best.
Absolutely not. None of us are. I have this quote. I am a perfect example of imperfection. Because I'm not perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I like the imperfections. My dad always said, you have to get the tree that's a straight one. Didn't he teach me you have to strive for the unattainable in a sense? So a storm came and it took a branch out and kind of bent the tree. Well, I had a friend back in Iowa that was a teacher, and he had the Future Farmers of America program. He came over and he used a washcloth and he tied my tree together, the stem, so it would heal itself. And that tree was always a little bit crooked. But you know what? I liked that tree. I liked its imperfections because it had character.
I was just going to say that it had character.
Yeah. Yeah. And why strive for what is so unattainable when you can have something that gives you joy, shade? This tree, the straight tree gives you shade. The crooked tree gives you shade. So you get the shade. What difference does it make? You know? Boy, I could talk to you for hours.
Well,
I like
appreciate
talking
that.
to people like, yeah. Well, that's what I said. You're the new generation that's coming to heal the earth.
Well, I don't think I'm like the rest of my generation, though. I think I
No,
should
you're
be.
not.
I should be 50, but I'm not.
Well,
it's
no.
My dad is the youngest of 11 kids, big Irish family, and all of my cousins are in their 50s and 60s. I'm significantly younger than the rest of my quote unquote generation.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's okay. You were here, planted here for this purpose. And I think you are a blessing to the world. And I want you to keep it up because
Thank you.
You are a pretty fantastic young man. Your
Thank
wife
you.
is lucky and so are your kids.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I don't speak it if it's not true. And I don't even know you, but I can tell just from our talk. I can see when a person's lying or not. Because like I said, I have all those senses and I can read a person. It just
you know what's interesting, and that's what I like about podcasting versus other forms of media. Like, it's really easy for somebody to lie and somebody to be somebody different for 6 or 11 minutes, like you see on traditional media. When you really spend the time to talk to somebody, which a podcast, you're 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. I'm a big fan of the podcast Hardcore History. His episodes are 6 hours. But it's really hard to fake it for that long. Does that make sense? So like you get real life experience because eventually that person has to show through.
Yeah. Yeah. Give enough rope and they'll hang themselves. Yeah, that was a saying my dad always had. So
yeah.
Well, speaking of time, we're getting close to the end. So what else would you like to share?
You know, I don't know. We shared so much, Ann. I
know.
I don't think I got anything left. We've covered some incredible things.
Yeah. So how can people get a hold of you?
Well, if they want to check out what I'm doing, I've been running a podcast since 2014 called the Create Your Own Life Show. They can get that over at jeremyryanslate.com. Or if they're looking to, take advantage of the podcast world, which is what we've been doing since 2016. We've been helping people to be guests on incredible shows and do a great job at that. That's over at commandyourbrand.com.
Cool. So do you have anything else to add? Because I hate to end this, but I know we have to.
Well, I would say that if there's one thing that people get out of today, I would tell them that like your viewpoints are probably the most important thing to you. And I would say like having the right ones, the positive ones, and realizing that you are more causative in life than effective life, that'll be the biggest change in your life. If you can kind of take that, internalize it, and do something with it.
Wise words for young man. Okay, Jeremy. Well, I so appreciated our conversation today, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. So anyway, you could be my grandson. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your time. And I also want to thank the audience for being part of our conversation today and joining Common Sense Living Podcast. Hope that you all enjoyed it and that you learned something. So please leave a kind review and share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to check us out on podcasts, wherever they are, Common Sense Living Podcast. And I'll be here again the next time. So, toodaloo. Thank you for tuning in to my Common Sense Living Podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure you learned something new. Please leave a kind review and share this episode with a friend. And be sure to subscribe yourself. You'll find me on iTunes, Spotify, and other platforms. And don't forget, we'll be here again next week with another insightful episode of Common Sense Living. I can hardly wait.